Hello, everybody. It is Friday in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, assistant sports editor for multimedia at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, joined by Colin Beazley, our Post-Gazette Pirates insider, for our latest Pirates offseason podcast. We're going to be talking about the 40-man roster, who the Pirates have decided to protect from the Rule 5 draft coming up at the winter meetings, who they've let go either through non-tendering or some other decisions so that they could add people to the 40-man roster. We're going to talk about the arbitration decisions that are ongoing. There's a Friday deadline, so some of this may be old news by the time you listen to it, but we're going to talk about the situation as it stands on early Friday afternoon here in Pittsburgh. We're also going to get into the Kyle Schwarber situation. People have been talking about it a lot, so me and Colin are going to dig into that a little bit further. Before we do, just want to remind you that this show is presented by FanDuel. Colin, I guess here right off the rip, let's talk about Jack Suwinski. He was tendered a contract. The Steelers agreed to pay him $1.25 million for next season. We'll get into some of the other guys, but I think that was Jack Suwinski is always an interesting case for people because we've seen the power at times and we've seen the profound struggles and the staring off to the scoreboard. Just looking completely lost at times. What was your read on their decision to bring him back? He's going to be 28, during next season. He's not a kid anymore. He's not a young player. But we've also seen guys blossom late in their careers, especially if you have that power. I think Garrett Jones is probably the best example in recent Pirates history of a guy who never quite panned out in terms of making that transition as a prospect. And that's how he ended up with the Pirates from the Twins. But then obviously he went on an unholy tear and was able to unleash and become a Pirates regular heading into that 2013 playoff appearance. So is that the math here with Jack Suwinski? Is that this organization doesn't have enough power? He has it. It's just a question of unlocking it.
First of all, Adam, it's great to see you. Great to be here. I'm excited to be doing this with you today as our good friend Jason Mackey helps out on the Penguins a little bit. I do have to say it's the Pirates signing Jack Suwinski, not the Steelers. I do have to make that joke just for the fun of it. I know you do a lot of our Steelers coverage as well, but
it's the reflex.
Yeah, but as for the Jack Suwinski contract, I was surprised by it. I thought that there was a real chance that he was going to be non-tendered today, I guess. I was a little bit surprised that he made it through the Rule 5 deadline, but as I was writing about it, as I was writing my story that went up on the Post-Gazette yesterday, was intended as a bit of a preview of today's decision. I kind of wrote that I thought it was tough to see a future in Pittsburgh for Jack Suwinski, but the one thing that made me stop in saying that it was a for sure thing is because of what happened on Tuesday, where as part of the Rule 5 deadline, which we'll talk about in a bit, the Pirates let go of Alexander Canario and Ronny Simon, their two other depth outfielders. There's just not a lot of depth in the Pirates outfield right now. They don't have many options other than Bryan, Reynolds, Oneil, Cruz, and frankly, Jack Suwinski is the third guy right there. However, I think the main reason they kept him is because of what he did in 2023 and is because of what he's shown that he can do. He hit, I believe it was 220-something with 26 home runs and 74 RBIs in that breakout 2023 season. You know how badly the Pirates need a guy like that right now? Really, really badly. They need a guy who's going to give them some pop in left field, who's going to play solid defense, who's going to drive guys in. They need a solid left-handed bat for PNC Park. They really need that. And at $1.2 million, I see why they'd take the bet in it. However, considering how, frankly, bad Jack Suwinski has been over the last 2 years, I still am a little bit surprised that they're giving him one last chance, even if the Pirates desperately need a guy like Jack Suwinski at his best.
What's your level of hope for him? Because I was on when we were doing these podcasts with Jason during the season when we were doing our Thursday, kind of when he was still in his columnist role. He just looks completely lost to me when he's up there. It's kind of just like a playing out the string type of situation. And we've seen guys move on from the Pirates before and have success, and he just kind of seemed like that classic change of scenery might benefit him type of situation. So is this simply a matter of they have nothing else, so you had to bring him back because you don't know how the offseason is going to unfold? If they do make a move, is he still potentially expendable, or do you look at it as this is the only potential cheap source of power that they have?
You didn't have to keep him. I mean, there's no depth right now, but they're not playing games for another couple of months. The Pirates will bring in an outside outfielder this offseason. I'm 100% certain of it. I don't know whether that's someone who fans can get excited about, whether it's a guy that they're going out and spending for, whether it's a big trade, or whether it's a Tommy Pham type. But I do know that they will bring in someone other than Jack Suwinski. If there's simply not enough major league ready outfielders on the roster right now. I see why I see where you can logic bringing him back, just because he's cheap. He's been good at his very, very best. He's someone that the Pirates desperately need. However, I don't think it's going to happen in Pittsburgh. I've seen enough of Jack Suwinski's struggles over the last couple of years. I agree with what Jason said. He's looked lost. The struggles have been real. He's hit under 200. The pop hasn't really been there. I think he needs a change of scenery, and I don't think that he's going to be his old self in Pittsburgh. However, I understand where the Pirates are coming from and giving him one last opportunity. They don't really lose much by bringing him back and giving him one last shot to figure it out.
Yeah, and if he goes and hits 30 home runs somewhere, that Ben Cherington, this front office, will never hear the end of it. So I get it. And now that I think now that people are a little more emotionally removed from watching him struggle every night, that it's a lot easier to logic than it is, maybe in the middle of June. Colin, as we're recording this, there are 5 guys that still haven't settled with the Pirates in terms of, being arbitration eligible. Oneil, Cruz, Dennis Santana, Joey Bart, Johan, Oviedo, and Justin Lawrence. What are your expectations in terms of them getting deals before this deadline, or whether they're going to go into arbitration with the club?
I mean, today's not the deadline to give them a contract and agree on a figure. That happens in January at the non-tender deadline, or that at the arbitration deadline. That's something that'll still go on. But today's the deadline if they just want to set these guys free, if they don't think that they're worth whatever these deadline arbitration. So I think that I expect today to be relatively quiet. I don't necessarily think that any of these guys will necessarily agree to deals with the club before 6 o'clock today, but I also don't think that the Pirates are looking to move on from any of them. I'm sure that there'll be a process over what exactly Oneil Cruz is worth, but I think that the Pirates will pay that, whatever it ends up being. It's projected 3.6 according to MLB trade rumors, which sounds about right. That's another gamble that the Pirates have to make. I think that Johan Oviedo is someone that they for sure want to keep. Dennis Santana, they for sure want to keep. Justin Lawrence, I think that they'll probably want to keep him. If anyone gets non-tendered, I think that there'd be a tiny chance of it being him, just because they have so many right-handed relievers, but he's not going to be particularly expensive and was really effective last year. The only one that could be remotely interesting is Joey Bart, and I'm kind of interested to see what the Pirates do there. I don't think he was one of the 2 above league average hitters for the Pirates last year, according to WRC+. So I don't think the Pirates are just going to let him go for nothing. However, considering Henry Davis and Rafael Flores and Andy Rodriguez and really Joey Bart's struggles last year, considering he just wasn't his 2024 self, I am curious what they do with him and what his role on the 2026 roster will be. However, I don't think he's getting cut today.
That'll be interesting to see, because obviously there's such a disparity there in terms of his offense versus his defense, and the value and how that sorts out. Makes it a difficult decision, as it was in terms of how the Pirates ended up with him in the first place. So let's talk a little bit about this Rule 5 draft, the guys that were protected by being added to the 40-man roster. Then we'll talk about some of the guys heading out and how we should or should not feel about that. The 6 guys that they had protected were Esmerlyn Valdez, Jack Brannigan, Wilber Dotel, Antwone Kelly, Brandon Bidois, and Tyler Samaniego. Am I saying that correctly, Colin?
Basically, I haven't fully figured out how to pronounce Tyler Samaniego's name yet. I don't know if that's right. I'm going to find out. I'll know by the season, but right now I'm not 100% sure.
Any surprises there for you in terms of who was added and who they saw fit to protect, from being possibly plucked by another club come the winter meetings?
A little bit, to be honest. When I talked with Jason about this earlier this week, and we went through and we talked about our guys that we would protect, and we both agreed that Esmerlyn Valdez was someone that has to be protected. He's not necessarily major league ready. I don't think he's going to be part of the outfield mix, at least out of spring training. I could see him making a late 2026 debut, but he's not necessarily seen as big league ready, considering he doesn't have that much experience at AA, let alone AAA. However, you had to protect him, considering his power and what he's brought to, and how badly the Pirates need power right now. We also agreed that you should protect Brandon Bidois in an 0.74 ERA in 2025. Pitched at all 4 levels, had success at AAA, had that scoreless streak, was really effective. I think he's a guy who deserves a big league shot, and I think that he would have gone claimed if they had left him unprotected. Those 2 were the easy ones. The 2 that Jason and I disagreed on a little bit, and the Pirates ended up agreeing with me for what it's worth, if anyone's keeping score there. But Wilber Dotel and Antwone Kelly. Those are both right-handed pitchers who primarily started at AA Altoona. Both had breakouts of sorts in 2025. Neither were particularly consistent, but both added velocity to their fastball. Both had stayed healthy throughout the entire year. Both were durable. Both got guys out. Both had good strikeout and walk numbers. And those were guys that I thought could potentially be snagged by a Rule 5 team and put in the bullpen for a year and then transition back into being a starter. Jason wasn't sure, considering how much pitching the Pirates currently have on their 40-man roster, but the club ended up protecting them. So those were the 4 that I wanted to keep. Is there anything do you have any thoughts on any of what I just said?
No, I don't. Not super read in on the prospect situation. So I do think it's interesting anytime you mention the velocity stuff. Sometimes that's really all that matters at that level. Are there peripherals improving in a way that you feel like you can mold? So we'll see how the Pirates handle that moving forward.
Yeah, and Dotel and Kelly were both guys that had good peripheral numbers. I need to get a glass of water. So both of those guys really stepped up in 2025. The 2 I was surprised by is Brannigan and Samaniego. Samaniego, I understand a little bit more. He's a left-handed reliever. He's got some good stuff. He's got strikeout stuff, good frame, had some injuries, but he's a left-handed reliever and throws hard, and that's something that the Pirates need. Currently, they're only lefties, let alone left-handed relievers on the 40-man roster. Before the Rule 5 draft were Evan Sisk and Hunter Barco, neither of which I feel particularly confident should have a key role out of a big league bullpen in 2026. Barco, I think, is a starter, and Sisk, I think, can be. He's a big league reliever, but I don't know if he should be your top lefty. By having Samaniego, I think that there's a chance that he could play into that mix. I do still think they need a lefty reliever in free agency, but I think Samaniego can be part of that mix, and I'm intrigued to see what the Pirates have in him. Brannigan's the one that I'm kind of scratching my head a little bit. He's played 51 games above high A, and last year he spent pretty much the entire year injured. When he was healthy, he wasn't even particularly great. In 2025, he had 200 at-bats, 5 home runs, 30 RBIs, batted .225 at AA, and plays shortstop and third base. Those are 2 positions that the Pirates need, but I don't really think that he would have been selected in the Rule 5 draft, considering that he'd have to be rostered for the entire year. I don't think he's close to helping the 2026 Pirates. I'm intrigued in what the club sees in him and why they felt it was necessary to protect him, but I I think they could have gotten away with leaving him unprotected and waiting until he was closer to the big leagues before using a 40-man spot on him.
We'll keep an eye on him and how that situation develops. And obviously, like, sometimes the decision is simply, it only takes one team to like a guy, right, Colin? And if you're concerned about that one team taking that one guy, sometimes you make this decision now to prevent that player from getting there, and then you deal with the results afterwards. So sometimes it's not always like kind of a long-term thing. It's just like, maybe we know this club really likes this kid and we don't want to give him up. So sometimes it's that simple in baseball. Let's move on to the guys that they moved on from. Colin Holderman, Dauri Moreta. They were two guys that we saw quite a bit of with the Pirates. Ronny Simon and Alex Canario, you mentioned them earlier. And Cam Devanney, who was in the Adam Frazier trade, will pursue opportunities in Japan. Were you surprised in terms of any of those guys who they moved on from? I think Pirates fans were tired of seeing Colin Holderman struggle. He was kind of one of the punching bags for a big chunk of the fan base. I think people liked Moreta and wanted to maybe see things play out a little bit more with him. I think Canario just kind of falls into that dime a dozen depth outfielder situation. Obviously had, quite a bit of time with the Pirates last season, but didn't really seize anything. So I think Cam Devanney is the one I was surprised that they moved on from as quickly as they did, considering he was kind of a trade deadline addition. Not sure what I expected for them to get for Adam Frazier, but I know Cam Devanney had shown some power at points. Colin, were you surprised that they moved on from him or allowed him to go to Japan? And were there any other names that piqued your interest there?
With Devanney, not necessarily. That's a story that I reported, that he's going to go and sign with the Hanshin Tigers in Japan. I think that'll be, first of all, I wish him the best of luck. I think that'll go well for him. I think that'll be a situation where he can star in Japan and he can have a lot of success there. In 2025, when he made it up with the Pirates, he had a pretty dismal September. He struck out at a 55% clip. He didn't show his pop. His defense was solid, but he didn't really look like a big league hitter. I think that he could have been like a AAA major league depth piece and shuffled back and forth a little bit. But at the same time, I don't think there was a major role for him at the big league level. So I don't necessarily mind the Pirates letting him go. And I've seen a lot of people putting online that this is just another example of a terrible Ben Cherington trade, and this was just a bad move. Yeah, it didn't work out, but what were you really going to get for Adam Frazier? I mean, he's a bench platoon bat. He was in his final year of eligibility. Not eligibility, that's college. Final year of his contract. It was a situation where all you're basically getting is a lottery ticket. And the Pirates got that. The Pirates traded the Royals with Devanney. He had some encouraging numbers at AAA. They scratched off the ticket. It didn't end up being worth anything, so they moved on. That's fine. That happens. It's not necessarily something where they missed out on something great that they could have had in terms of Adam Frazier. Adam Frazier was never going to get you too much, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's the expectations people have for what the Pirates can acquire is higher than what it is because the Pirates are so bad, right? And they don't have a lot of actual assets and these veteran. And Adam Frazier falls in that category. I know people kind of think of him as, what he was coming up through the Pirates system, going on that all-star appearance. You kind of have this vision of what Adam Frazier means to you as a baseball player, but who was he in 2024? And what was it? He was kind of a journeyman at that point, and there was no kind of like long-term commitment there. So I think it's valid to be frustrated that the lottery ticket didn't work out. I think you would have. So many times we've seen Ben Cherington go for these younger players in these trades that, if you're going to get a lottery ticket, get a guy who's in single A, maybe double A, or even lower than that. So a guy that you have a chance to develop a little bit. Going for a move like this Colin, I think is why people are frustrated, is that you're bringing a guy like that in with the expectation of potentially helping you, and you didn't get that. It just kind of feels like a wasted lottery ticket, if that makes sense. So I get the frustration from the fan base in that regard, but I think people have overvalued Adam Frazier and therefore the return from him. That's probably also true. Did you have any thoughts on Moreta and him moving on?
Yeah, and I will say with the other three, with Holderman, Canario, and Simon, I wasn't particularly shocked to see any of them go. With Moreta, that's something that he's well liked with the fan base. He's well liked in the clubhouse. He's a solid big league reliever. But one of the most important things that matters with a bullpen is optionability, and you're going to shuffle through bullpen guys throughout the entire season. There's 162 games. Injuries happen. Sometimes you'll need an arm for a day. Sometimes you'll need innings. Sometimes you just need one guy. And it's very rare that someone lasts throughout the entire season. Someone is in a big league bullpen for the entire year if they're not a Dennis Santana, or if they're not a not even David Bednar. He was optioned last year. If you're not like one of the top guys. Moreta was out of minor league options. So next year, if they were to keep him, they would have to keep him in the bullpen for the entire season. If they wanted to have him around, they couldn't move him up and down from Indianapolis or to Pittsburgh or vice versa whenever they needed an arm. I think that was probably the biggest thing there. Yes, he's effective. Yes, he's well liked. Yes, he's a fan favorite. But at the same time, he's someone who doesn't give you as many roster options as some of the guys they brought up, like a Bidois or like Ryan Harbin, who they added to the 40-man roster, I think, 2 weeks ago. That's really, I think, what it is there. But I also think that Moreta will land on his feet somewhere and will certainly get another big league opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's where the frustration of, you mentioned like Jack Brannigan earlier, is as some of these guys that seemed fringe to protect from the Rule 5 draft. Now the result is you lose a guy that people liked that maybe you would have preferred to keep. But it seems like, just like you said, the option situation kind of, they want more fluidity with that group.
Yeah, but you also can't keep every right-handed reliever you have. And right now, with my article yesterday, I wrote that including Johan Ramirez, who I'm also surprised they kept. I would have rather had Moreta than Ramirez for what it's worth, but that's something that changed. Right now, the Pirates have 10 right-handed relievers on their 40-man roster. I don't really see the need for that many, considering that you have 8 or so in a bullpen and you want to have some lefties in there as well. And they need to add some relief help in free agency, but at the same time, you can't have them all. So I get that someone has to go, and it's a shame that it's Moreta. I like the guy, but it's not too big of a loss.
Let's move on to the hot stove situation. The Jeff Passan report about the Pirates being interested in Kyle Schwarber has kind of taken over the zeitgeist. I know you and Jason talked a little bit about it earlier in the week, but it's kind of taken on a life of its own since then. Did you have any additional thoughts? I think there was a projection floating around of the contract they would need to sign him to would probably be 5 years, $160 million, which is just so far out of the Pirates characteristically. And I'm just going to set the table for this conversation this way. I don't necessarily want to see the Pirates go all in on one guy like that. I think this team is so deeply flawed that you can't fix it with one power bat. As much as it'd be fun to watch Kyle Schwarber with the Pirates, as big of a difference as he might be able to make, $160 million is a lot of money for this team. And my thought would be there's got to be something between what they haven't signed a free agent to a multi-year contract since Ivan Nova in 2015. There's going to be something between there and throwing all your eggs in the Kyle Schwarber basket. Am I wrong?
Oh, come on, Adam. You don't want to see how many balls he can hit in the river? You don't want to see that?
I was at that 06 home run derby. I saw a lot of river balls, so I'm good on that front. I think people want to see them win. So
it's off for you. You don't want to. You hate fun, Adam. You hate fun. No, but I see what you're saying. That's a very valid point. the Pirates do have multiple needs this offseason. They need a third baseman. They need a left fielder. They need a designated hitter. They need relief help. They're not just one power bat away from being a playoff team, but power bat is the number one thing they need. I don't necessarily see them as a fit for Kyle Schwarber, just because, like you mentioned, it's probably 5 years, $160 million, and whatever he gets, the Pirates would have to probably overpay on top of whoever's offering in order to get a guy like Kyle Schwarber to come here, just because there hasn't been the success. So I don't necessarily see it as a fit. I will say the Pirates have more flexibility to take bigger swings, to sign a bigger contract than they have in years past. I just don't necessarily see a Kyle Schwarber being a fit or being something that can realistically happen. But again, I would love to be proven wrong. I'd love to see them do that. I would, if they sign it, I will happily hold up my hand and say I was wrong, but I don't see it as a fit.
He's also 32 years old. So not on the younger end. And, you know, sometimes we've seen some of these power bats age fairly gracefully. So, you know, I'm not going to say Kyle Schwarber is going to be cooked. It's just, it does seem like such a luxury item. And that seems like a contract that the Phillies should be signing, that the Yankees should be signing. He's a guy that you know, you can spend that 160 means a lot less to them than it would to the Pirates. And it's just a matter of, would you rather have 2, 3, 4 players on multi-year deals that add to your clubhouse credibly? Because it's been a frustration I expressed with Jason at times, is that they've just gone after so many of these 1-year deals with these free agents, and you're in the bargain bin. And I think the Pirates fell in love with what happened to them in 2013 with Francisco Liriano and some of those guys that worked out on 1-year contracts. And you see it around baseball, that these guys on these prove-it deals do make good on them, then go get a more lucrative contract. And if you're a team like the Pirates, you have to take your chance on some of them. But the way that they totally lived their existence in that bargain bin and never delving into that middle ground of free agents, I think is probably one of the biggest shortcomings of this Ben Cherington, Derek Shelton era from 2019, you know, pretty much since Ben Cherington was fired. So let's just take Schwarber as the name out of there. Do you think that they're going to lean more into potentially another bigger name and on a big contract, or be taking the more manageable approach of signing like an Ivan Nova? I think people have fond memories of what he was able to do for the Pirates on a cheap contract. I mentioned Liriano. They've had success with those types of guys in the past, and that's more where I would be looking for them to spend the more money that may or may not materialize, or may not be just the payroll that left last year. I think that they have to prove, Joe Starkey wrote a column about this, they have to prove that they're serious and they're not just repurposing last year's payroll and saying, look, we gave you these new guys with the same money that came off the books. They're going to have to prove that to people. But I guess the conversation is more toward, however they spend that money, are they better served finding guys in that mid-tier free agency category?
I think they are. I think that they have. I mean, Ben Cherington spoke about having flexibility to do some different things this offseason. And I think the signing a multi-year free agent is something that makes sense and something that's a more reasonable possibility this year than it has been in the past. I don't necessarily know what names necessarily make sense there. I do think that probably a step or two underneath the Kyle Schwarber equation probably makes more sense, but I think that they'll be able to sign a couple guys sign or trade for a couple guys who will be around for more than just 2026. And I think that that's something that'll help them in a lot of ways. I'm sure that there'll be a 1-year deal or two to supplement the team, but I think that they can make a multi-year deal and find something that fits.
Well, and I think that's something that would add substantially to a morale boost for the fan base, which you desperately need this offseason as well, because I think you'd have times of seeing some of these, like Tommy Pham working out well after, like he took off well after the season was lost. And if he was on a multi-year deal with the Pirates, you could look at that and say, well, now he's figured some things out. He's going to be around next season. You can place some level of hope in that. But with all this parade of one-year guys, they're probably moving on, or the Pirates would have extended them. So it's hard to watch those games in August, September, when you know that a guy's not necessarily going to be around. So maybe they make some of these deals and maybe they don't work out immediately. But if these guys have a Tommy Pham type of arc and become contributors and they're on a 2 or 3 year deal, you can say, hey, he's starting to figure it out. He's found his place here in Pittsburgh, and now I can invest some level of hope in the future. That's what this franchise so sorely lacks. So it'll be interesting to see how Ben Cherington handles that moving forward. Colin, any final thoughts here as we wrap up this latest week of the offseason?
No, I'm just excited to see how today goes, if they'll throw us anything interesting, if any of these players will be non-tendered. I'm expecting a quiet day, but I am curious to see how the day proceeds.
Okay, we'll stay tuned to post-gazette.com for that. Colin will have any dispatches that are relevant and certainly any news that takes place over the weekend. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. We would appreciate having you along for the ride. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. We always appreciate that. And please check out all of our written work at post-gazette.com. Obviously, I have Steelers Bears coming up this week. I'll be back on the post-game show with Paul Zeiss. So lots coming your way. Check out all of our other channels, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.
Hit the wrong button.